Major Thabo Sello says there will also be a wreath-laying ceremony in which members of the Bree families will be afforded a chance to participate.
We expected to see the Minister of Defense in attendance with the Chief and the Military Command Council, together with the families of the deceased, the members who passed on in the missions, the UN mission and other missions as well. So actually it's a very big day. We will have a parade, consist of a parade and a wreath-laying ceremony.
There are 3 people convicted in the disappearance case of Jocelyn Smith. They have each been sentenced to life for human trafficking and 10 years for kidnapping in South Africa. The sentences of the girl's mother, Kelly Smith, Jacqueline Apollos, and Stevino van Ryan will run concurrently. The girl disappeared from her home in the Middle Sports informal settlement in Saldanha Bay in February last year. This is how Judge Nathan Erasmus handed down the sentence.
Subject to the evidence that's going to be presented on sentence, I will then determine when I will have the hearing, the 2 of 4 and the indemnity issue, which will be a separate hearing relating to Ms. Lombard and her legal representative, because I want to hear all.
Congolese political analyst Didier Bayeye has questioned the manner in which former President Joseph Kabila returned to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Kabila is in the rebel-held eastern city of Goma for talks with locals. If confirmed, his visit could complicate the U.S.-backed efforts to end the rebellion by the M23 armed group, which controls mineral-rich areas that the Trump administration is eager to develop, Bayeye explains.
The main issue here, or the main question, is not the return of the former President Joseph Kabila to the DRC, but how he returned to the DRC and then from where he has entered. Now, before we even get there or analyze that, when he left, why he's come back, he's making headline. Was he a refugee? Was he an escapee? Or he was just a normal person that left his country for a reason well known to himself? That is where the question is.
Politicians and affected communities in Namibia of mass killings during German colonial rule have voiced fresh calls for reparations from Berlin. Namibia held an inaugural Memorial Day for the victims of the killings yesterday. German soldiers killed some 65,000 and over Herero and 10,000 Nama people in 1904 to 1908. Tabiso Luhuku reports.
Historians and the United Nations have long called the mass killings by the German colonial rule the first genocide of the 20th century. However, Germany officially described the massacre as a genocide for the first time in 2021, agreeing to fund development projects worth $1.2 billion in the southern African country, but stopping short of paying reparations. Namibian officials and representatives of the Ova Herero and Nama people say that is not enough.
Lastly, Britain says it's setting up a new cyber warfare command to assist in defending the UK from such attacks and to assist in carrying them out. The Defence Secretary John Healey says more than $1.3 billion dollars will be spent on developing or enhanced technology. The BBC's Jonathan Beale elaborates.
The Defence Secretary says the UK's new digital targeting web will better connect soldiers on the ground with key information provided by satellites, aircraft and drones to help them target enemy threats faster. As part of the Defence Review, there'll also be a new cyber and electromagnetic command. Over the last 2 years, UK defence officials say they've been targeted by more than 90,000 cyber attacks by potential adversaries, including Russia and China.
Channel Africa News, I am Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And Msibudi Makura with our sports headlines. We are on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, an OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. And you can join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 at 406 9126 #Africa Updates, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Are you ready to level up your influence, your content, and
And we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. The second session of the United Nations Habitat Assembly is underway in Nairobi, Kenya. The assembly convenes every 4 years and is the highest global decision-making body on sustainable urbanization and human settlements. South Africa's Human Settlements Minister, Thembi Simelane, is attending the assembly, and she now joins us on the line. Minister, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to our viewers.
Now, Minister, tell us more about the role South Africa and Africa play in the UN Habitat Assembly.
Well, thank you very much. As you correctly indicated, this is the second General Assembly of the UN Habitat. Its intention mainly is to ensure that there's obviously what we espouse to, which is housing our nations and creating better formalized settlements in line with the SDG protocol, which talks to urbanization and looking into migration and incorporation into smaller cities and turning them into bigger cities. But this comes from a view and a research which says the world will be 80-90% urban in 20-30 years' time to come. In fact, some of the scholars are even suggesting that urbanization is so rapid that in 10-15 years, there will be very few rural areas, even in areas of Africa, where predominantly we have a very sparse and a different urban and rural edge. So our theme for this assembly is sustainable urban future through inclusive growth. So how do we make sure, for example, as SADC, as South Africa in particular, that our growth is inclusive? It allows everybody an opportunity to be in areas which brings convenience, economic emancipation and growth for every citizen. If you localize the theme into our home ground, it then says we need to bring into the fore alternative building materials. One of the panelists and contributors into this is the China Human Settlement and India Human Settlement divisions, which are sharing with us how do they really maximize on the time and the period in which they build, whether it's a school or a hospital. We've seen this through COVID, and they're utilizing alternative building materials. We then have our APT systems in South Africa, which we hope to incorporate. We brought with us in the South African delegation a team led by the Deputy Mayor, Ukansela Ushezi, from a city of eThekwini, and our South African Local Government Association, SALGA Research Unit, led by Councillor Sotasha, who's responsible for human settlement and water provision, to allow us to be able as South Africa to fully contextualize how sustainable and future urban dwellings can look like and be transferred into South Africa. In a nutshell, I can say that's what today has been about. We still have tomorrow and early Saturday to conclude the assembly.
Now, Minister, what are some of the issues that you will be highlighting at the Assembly? Just what you've touched on now in terms of the alternate building materials, which is something that South Africa definitely needs with the housing shortage that the country is facing.
Well, funny, we're doing relatively well, in fact, in terms of research exposure in South Africa into alternative building technologies. You know, some schools in Tanzania are built out of material and the process that has been laid by a system of Mulati, led by NHBRC, our council in South Africa, which have already been conceptualized and are being utilized. I think what we need to do, one, is public awareness at home, that there are alternatives, strong, good quality, contrary to what we know to be brick and mortar. Two, we are participating tomorrow in how do you infuse in a human rights and equal manner on how the Constitution could allow every citizen to have access. Yes, we know of housing and to be housed and reside anywhere else you want. Yes, we know that is an ideal of the Constitution. It's practically still a giant mile that as South Africa we still have to walk. But quite a number of our countries are looking forward into our input on how did we first be able to convene, ideally agree on what every citizen needs to be equal to as a country in a constitution, and the difficulties we're facing in terms of, example, the spatial transformation, the availability of land, your Section 25 in terms of expropriation, the cost, and how is the fiscus going to fund the movement and creation, the convenience of the historically disadvantaged individuals into the cities where everybody has an equal right to live, because there must be sharing of equal opportunities. So I think we are also learning from other. Ethiopia as well is also as part of the teams which are also sharing on alternative and innovation, which they've utilized in the rebuilding of their country with regard to alternative building technologies. So the entire regional of the African component is here, right all the way South Africa, Eswatini, Malawi, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, within the SADC sphere, where we are exchanging in our regional group to ensure that we become one and we forge ahead in terms of housing our nations in an appropriate manner.
Now, Minister, another challenge that I think we face, whether it's the SADC region or just across the African continent, are the issue of floods and cyclones, which are brought on by climate change. Now, in terms of also just building on the alternate building materials, what has been brought to the fore when it comes to, ensuring that people don't lose their properties and people are safe when there's heavy rains and heavy downpours?
There's very much advanced technologies which are being showcased. For example, houses which have got early warning systems, checking on the weather outside, build on alternative material. When it's cold, they are warmer. When it's warm, they are cooler. But they are also fire resistant, and the durability of the foundation with regard to how it is built to sustain your floods and your heavy water retention in a particular area at a particular given time. Some have been tested in South Africa as old as 12 years. And now currently in the Mulati system that I've been talking and indicating that it's part of our work in human settlement with regard to alternative building technologies. So we're learning what other countries are already doing. Some buildings are as old in other countries as 10, 20 years, and they are durable, they are sustainable, there are measures in how they could be utilized. We're also learning on how they are managing slums, which me and you in our language, we usually refer to them as informal settlements. For example, our emergency response in South Africa is relatively outdated in terms of issuing out of rebuilding material contrary to the mitigation of what the climate would want. For example, we know in the Western Cape, in the early days of November, December, there will be strong winds which cause fires in our shacks. Rather than distributing your normal shack dwelling material to be rebuilt, you can use fire resistant one. You can distribute fire extinguishing balls, maximize on that rather than using your fiscus to be utilized in one and the same person. A check can burn 3-4 times.
Yeah.
And in this instance, we have been reissuing the same type of the old material, which has got still the potential of not being sustainable. So there's quite a lot of what we're doing, but we also have learnings with regard to what our weather service bureau in South Africa does, the South African Weather Services, and how do you respond in a climate manner with regard to eradication, rapid response, but also at the time where there is no disaster happening, because you would have mind mapped your space, you need to be able to move and relocate the people before disaster strike. Because
now,
at
Minister,
the
just in
backbone of
wrapping
disaster
up very
prevention
quick,
will
very
be
briefly,
the saving of
you're
lives.
also expected to hold bilateral meetings. Can you tell us briefly about some of these meetings?
Well, we have just concluded one bilateral with South African cities network in the world, which is going to be assisting and making contribution into our white paper on local government. We are part of our delegation as DM Dr. Namane Masemola, who's leading that field. The mayor, as the deputy mayor of eThekwini, will be in a bilateral as well on how to redevelop and cleanse the cities. You will recall the history of your London in terms of degrading and rebuild. And these are the status in which, for example, eThekwini is at. Mayor is rebuilding and is regrowing what the city used to be. And they are also going to be participating in the satellite and the discussion is on the sideline. I will also be participating on the sidelines as well in discussion with China, directly inviting and ensuring that alternative building technologies are enshrined in South Africa. And lastly, the ED, which is the executive director, a sideline discussion with myself in preparation of our G20 visit to South Africa, and South Africa hosting and opening a UN Habitat office as led by the Department of Human Settlement. That's all in a nutshell what will be about in the coming days.
Well, Minister, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll leave it there for today.
Thank you.
That is South Africa's Human Settlements Minister Thembisi Melani joining us on the line. It is 20 after 12 Central African time. National Dialogue, which brings together nearly 800 participants from various horizons in a climate marked persistent political with tensions. Now, this framework of consultation under the leadership of President Basiru Diomaye Faye aims to explore options to set up the democratic foundations of the country, emphasizing reconciliation and national unity. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by Senegalese reporter Amadou Kamara Gueye. Amadou, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very well.
Now, Amadou, why is it important that this dialogue be held now, and what are the discussions going to be focusing on?
Yes, it is a very important moment for Senegalese democracy because it is something which was institutionalized by the former President Macky Sall May 28 to discuss about the political, social, and cultural context. So, and many questions will be raised about how to reform the political system in Senegal, political parties, electoral vote, and also how to imply other political figure, meaning the opposition, and also influence figure in order to ease the political and the social context, which is very tense in Senegal. As you know, since Jomai and Sonko have taken the power, many opposition leaders are arrested, and Senegalese people start worrying, and people need to discuss as our tradition, meaning the dialogue, in order to ease the political and the social context, which is very tense. It started yesterday, and it will be lengthened the whole week. All the political figures from the regime, from the opposition, the member of the civil society will take the floor, explain, give arguments and recommendation in order to be in a peace context. Because as you know, before the election was held in 2024, the pre-electoral context was very tense. Many people were killed, many people were imprisoned, many people were wounded throughout different riots, protests.
Now, Amadou,
yes?
because of time, I have to just come in there. With regards to the marginalized and their voices and the struggles that have been brought through, has civil society echoed the voices of the marginalized?
Yeah, I don't think so, because the main figure that had been chosen to lead this dialogue is a member of the civil society named Dr. Cheikh Gueye. He is well respected by the civil society, and he tried to discuss with all the members in order to join this dialogue. However, there are some political parties as the farm regime, APR, and other parties who decided not to take part in this dialogue. But bear in mind that this dialogue, even it was initiated by the president, it was held by a member of the civil society named Dr. Cheikh Gueye.
Now, once the dialogue concludes on the 4th of June, what can we expect to happen?
So what we can expect is that to ease the social and the political context. So it is the first time that we see some members of the opposition shaking hand with Usman Sonko and with Jomai, and it never happened before. So it is a very good sign to see opposition member and the member of the regime gathering on a same table, even if they are not agree in many issues. They start discussing, shaking hands, smiling. I think it is a good thing. So we hope that in the upcoming days, they will find some agreement in the electoral system and how also to reform the political system of Senegal.
Amadou, we will leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you too.
That's Amadou Kamara Gueye, a Senegalese reporter, joining us on the line. It is 12:29 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406 9126 #Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459. It's 12:30, and our news headlines up next with Onele Nzinzi. Sibudi Makura with our sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. We'll start with cricket news. Now, Cricket South Africa as well as Cricket Namibia have announced a historic one-day once-off T20 international match between the Namibian Eagles as well as the Proteas men that is set to take place at the FNB Namibia Cricket Ground in Windhoek on the 11th of October. So this encounter will also mark the first ever international match between the two senior national sides, a significant milestone for African cricket. It will also serve as the official opening of the FNB NCG, which will also be the host venue for the ICC Under-19 Men's Cricket World Cup in 2026, as well as the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup in 2027. Now, Cricket South Africa's Chief Executive Officer, Poletsi Motseki, says they are honoured to be part of this historic occasion. He says Namibia are a competitive side, and this fixture will sort of reflect the growing strength of cricket on the African continent. On to football news now. The Sierra Leone women's national football team, the indomitable Serra Queens, will take on Mali in a high-stakes semi-final clash of the WAFU Zone A Women's Cup Mauritania in Mauritania later on today. So against all odds, as well as after a rocky start, the Queens showed the heart of true champions following a tough 3-0 loss to the Gambia side in the opener of this competition. The team came back roaring, defeating beating Guinea in a thrilling 3-1 showdown, and then holding tournament giants Senegal in a gritty 1-1 draw. So with the 4 hard-earned points, Sierra Leone clinched second place in Group B and stormed into the semi-finals for the very first time in this competition. Back home now, South Africa's women's senior national team's preparations for the Women's Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco in July are well on track. The African champions narrowly defeated Botswana by 3-2 in a 3-nation series-friendly match at the Lucas Masterpieces Morebe Stadium in South Africa's capital city Pretoria on Wednesday afternoon. So South Africa is featuring in a 3-nation tournament featuring their neighbours Botswana as well as Zambia. Banyana head coach Dr. Desiree Ellis admits that the Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament title defence will not be easy for her side. Now, Ellis also says they will take it a game by game in this 3-nation series.
We take it game by game and day by day. We don't have this big where we're going. We know where we want to go, but game by game and day by day. And I think that worked for us in the past, where we know the first game of any tournament. If you don't get the point in that one, you're always on the back foot. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that you're out, because the best second and the best third and all of that also gets to get in. But we don't want to put it in that position. We want to have our destiny in our own hands to make sure that we don't have to take out the calculators. We don't have to say the what ifs. This team must do this team must do that. But we know it's not going to be easy. Yeah. Make no mistake.
On to tennis news now. Iga Swiatek start on the clay court swing might have been slow, but she has found a quick step against Emma Raducanu in a 6-1, 6-2 victory at the French Open on Wednesday. Swiatek might not be at her absolute best in 2025, but she can dictate terms against anyone who's there for the taking. Asked about her secret to her success on the clays of Roland Garros, this is what she had to say.
Well, I don't know. You guys tell me. Probably the top spin that I play. And honestly, I just love playing here. This place really inspires me, and it makes me work harder, you know. And I feel for sure that having some time off before helped me a little bit. So I'm just ready to fight for it and compete.
And finally, in golf news, Charlie Woods has won his first American Junior Golf Association event to follow in the footsteps of his father, Tiger. Now, the 16-year-old American claimed a 3-shot victory at the Team Tailor-Made Invitational in Bowling Green, Florida. Tiger Woods played in 13 AJGA tournaments from 1991 to 1993, winning 8, the joint highest behind Phil Mickelson. In his 5th AJGA event, Charlie began the final round 1 shot behind overnight leader Luke Horton. Now ranked 606th by the AJGA, the teenager mixed 2 bogeys with 8 birdies for a 6-under par 66 on the black course at Streamsong Resort, which saw him also top the leaderboard at 15 under. Now, Willie Gordon on 65, Philip Deham on 68 and Colton on 70 finished 3 shots behind for the share of second place. Before this week, the younger Woods' best result on the junior circuit was a share of 25th place at the Junior Invitational at Sage Valley in March of this year. That's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Your weekday afternoons have been upgraded by The Upside with me, Tebohole Khuleni, and my partner in crime, Nompumelelo Ngubeni.
And if you want to find out all things luxury, fashion, travel,
Perspective.
Good afternoon, and our top business story this afternoon, the Africa Director at the Open Society Foundations, Desiree Asogbavi, says the African Development Bank needs to raise more capital to address major financial challenges the continent faces. This as the bank's group annual meetings are underway in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, with a clear and urgent call for Africa to mobilize its own capital and charge a path forward towards economic self-reliance. Asogbavi has also highlighted the need for Africa to have its own credit ratings agency.
And I think we need a more assertive African Union role in global financial negotiations. You know that the African Union has now become a full member of the G20, and I believe that this is an avenue for the Union to play a stronger role while deciding a worldwide, economic matters.
South African Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says that Africa must find different ways of becoming self-sufficient amid an unstable geopolitical environment. He spoke to the SABC News on the margins of the African Development Bank Group's annual meeting in Abidjan, Ivory Coast. The meeting comes as a trade war intensifies, affecting a number of countries. Godongwana elaborates.
One of the other challenges Africa is facing now, overseas development assistance is declining completely, and also the various trade challenges that are emerging as a result of the American. So what that means is that Africa has got to look at being self-sufficient, and we need institutions to be able to fund our own development as Africa. And therefore, this institution, amongst others, it has got to work with national development agencies and so on to attack the level of poverty and infrastructure deficiencies in our economy.
South Africa's Minister of Employment and Labour, Nomakosazana Meth, is hosting the second Elijah Bahai Memorial Lecture in honour of one of South Africa's most influential labour leaders. The memorial lecture is hosted in collaboration with the University of Johannesburg. The Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, Gwede Mandashe, is the guest speaker. Channel Africa reporter Michael Mbewe reports.
The inaugural Elijah Bahai Memorial Lecture held in May 2024 featured a keynote by South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, who paid tribute to Bahai's leadership and contribution to the fight for workers' rights. The event was widely praised for drawing connections between Bahai's historical role in mass labor mobilization and the ongoing struggle for decent work and economic justice.
Oil prices rose by about $1 a barrel after a U.S. court blocked most of President Donald Trump's tariffs, while the market was watching out for potential new U.S. sanctions, curbing Russian crude flows, and an OPEC Plus decision on hiking output in July. Brent crude futures climbed $1.03 or 1.6% to $65.93 a barrel. Yesterday, a U.S. trade court ruled that Trump overstepped his authority by imposing across-the-board duties on imports from U.S. trading partners. Now, if I look at our indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 585. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 28. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 41. And in Zambia, it's 26 kwacha 71. Moving on to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 reals 66. Russia, 79 rubles 90. In India, it's 85 rupees 42. China, 7 yuan 19, and South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 92 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 88 to the euro. Looking at the commodities this afternoon, gold is trading at $3,273 and platinum at $1,077 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $65.70 a barrel. And those are your business news this afternoon. At this hour, for any business news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Hedbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Africa Update. with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 12. Live from Johannesburg in South Africa. A new study has highlighted concerns about children's online safety in South Africa, with many accessing the internet without parental consent and encountering harmful content. The findings come as the country marks Child Protection Week. We are joined by Ephraim Tlhako, Acting Chief Executive Officer of the Films and Publications Board, to discuss the implications and potential solutions. Ephraim, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Now, this study reveals that 70% of children are accessing the internet without parental consent. Now, what initiatives is the Films and Publications Board undertaking to educate parents and guardians about the importance of digital supervision and online safety for children?
So, just to give context, Lulu, the Film and Publications Board is a public entity really mandated to regulate the creation, possession, and distribution of films, games, and certain publications. But at the core of our mandate really is the protection of children against harmful, age-inappropriate, and prohibited content online. So what is it that we are doing in ensuring that we are educating the public? We partner with a lot of our stakeholders from online platforms, from the Department of Basic Education, and all other entities, just ensuring that we are promoting online safety, ensuring that children, parents, teachers are aware of the online harms and how to protect themselves, and which channels do they have to report if they're picking up some of the prohibited content online.
Now, what specific measures is the board taking to collaborate with tech giants and online platforms to prevent the dissemination of harmful content and ensuring a safer online environment for children?
So one of the prohibitions of the Films and Publications Act is that material depicting child sexual abuse or violence against children should not be distributed. It is a criminal offense. And one of the instruments that we have as mandated by the Act is that we can then issue takedown notices to platforms, and internet service providers really have the obligation to work with law enforcement agencies to make sure that that kind of material is taken down, or at least they can preserve that material for evidence to be used within the courts. So we really work closely with the law enforcement agencies and the platforms themselves, I must say. There is collaborative work because we are realizing that alone we cannot be able to win the fight.
Now, live video streaming services are being used to sexually exploit children. How is the board working with law enforcement agencies and other stakeholders to identify and prosecute perpetrators? And what challenges are being faced in tackling these real-time threats?
So new technology is always a risk. We're seeing AI-generated images, for example, in relation to child sexual abuse material, live video like what you're saying. But there's also a responsibility from the tech companies themselves to make sure that they can verify age, because really for anyone who's using the platforms and they're underage, they should be able to pick them up. But we work very closely with them. But there are a number of cases where the Film and Publication Board has been involved in, especially in cases relating to child sexual abuse material. We've seen harsher sentences. There's a famous case, I think last year, some people may be aware of it, of the Gerard Ackerman case, where he was sentenced to multiple life sentences. And I think the courts are really taking these cases seriously. That, images of children online in a compromised position should not be seen as content, because there's a criminal offense for you to be creating such, or even for you just to be possessing it and you are distributing it among yourself. So we're just calling out to the public that please be aware of these things. Let's all play our role in protecting our children against the online harms.
And Ephraim, are there any possible legislative updates or policy changes that the board believes are necessary to effectively address this evolving online threat to children? And how can these changes be implemented to keep pace with the rapidly changing digital landscape?
The issue with the rapidly changing digital landscape is that because it is ever evolving, legislation is trying to play catch up. And the thing with legislation is that it's a lengthy process. It has to go through parliament, public comments by sort of the public, and then by the time it becomes a law, the issue that you wanted to address has now changed. We are now dealing with a new issue. So we are working very closely with our departments and all the other stakeholders to say, while we're still looking at reviewing the Act, what kind of regulations can we put in, especially because essentially we are regulating the technology environment, which is ever changing. So there's a number of conversations we're having with a whole lot of other stakeholders on how best can we do our best while we're still dealing with the reviews of the law, because in any law changes, it takes forever. But because this is a parliamentary process that has to be followed, it has to be followed like that. Unfortunately, during the gaps, what is it that we're doing? But we are not just sitting on our laurels. There are other regulations that we're thinking of how then can we put as a stopgap.
Now, as part of Child Protection Week, what message would you like to convey to parents, caregivers, and just the broader community about their role in protecting children online?
Look, us as parents, it is still our responsibility to parent our children. It is our responsibility. Technology and devices is not going to do that for us. But please, as a parent, take precautionary measures. Just randomly check what content your child is exposed to, especially children of different ages. For example, if you have an 11-year-old and you have a teenager, ensuring that your teenager only has access to what they're supposed to be watching, your 11-year-old also has access to only what they're supposed to be watching. Or also in terms of the games as well, because online gaming is also one of the issues. But really, there are other apps that parents can download on their phones so that at least they have visibility, even remotely, of what kind of games, what kind of apps their kids are downloading. But also, children, and this is the responsibility of parents, children should not be taking images of themselves, because then what happens, they innocently take these images, then they share among themselves. Before you know it, those images find themselves on porn sites, they find themselves on the internet. So the message that I would like to send is that parents, we need to play a huge role in ensuring that we are protecting our children. It's not just going to be a work of one state entity or one NGO. All of us have the collective responsibility, really.
And just in wrapping up, what support systems or resources are available for children who have been victims of online exploitation or abuse? And how can the board's findings inform the development of these support services to better meet the needs of affected children?
So there are a number of NGOs involved in the sector, because really ours, it's mostly just basically one in terms of the value chain. But in terms of the welfare of children, ensuring that children are protected, there are a number of NGOs working closely there. So I would say visit our website, ftb.org.za. Then you can see which NGOs we have partnered with, just in sending the message across. But really, just sort of inform yourselves, know what dangers are out there, and engage with us. If you need any more information, engage with us. We can then connect you to the nearest NGOs that can be able to assist. But really keep in touch with us and then get all the information from us.
Ephraim, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you so much.
That's Ephraim Tlhako, Acting Chief Executive Officer at the Films and Publications Board, joining us on the line.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
The 12th high-level meeting of the Regional Oversight Mechanism of the Peace, Security and Cooperation Framework for the Democratic Republic of Congo and the region has thanked Qatar and the United States for facilitating the peace efforts in the DRC. The high-level meeting was hosted in Uganda and chaired by President Yoweri Museveni. For more on the meeting, we are joined on the line by our correspondent in Uganda. It's Mike Arareng. Mike, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you very much, Lulu Gaboo, and a very good afternoon.
Now, Mike, who are the countries and bodies that were involved in the meeting?
There are about 13 countries and organizations. This is as to say, President of Burundi is here actually as I speak to you right now. And also there are other representatives from different African countries who are participating in that meeting. Representatives include countries like Angola, Burundi, Republic of Congo, DRC, Republic of Kenya, and Republic of Rwanda. Others included Republic of South Africa, the Republic of South Sudan, Republic of Sudan, United Republic of Tanzania, and Republic of Zambia. Also representatives from the African Union, Great Lakes region, and the United Nations who are participating in that meeting.
Now, concerns were raised about the worsening situation in the DRC. Talk to us about that very briefly.
Well, the situation still is tense at the moment as rebels continue controlling most of the towns which were captured by the rebels in the recent fights, actually. And as I speak right now, though the peace process has begun and the peace talks have started in Kuwait, until right now, as I speak to you right now, the situation is still tense. But according to the meeting, which was chaired by His Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, he actually has assumed the chairmanship of the Regional Oversight Mechanism of the Peace, Security and Cooperation Framework for the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Great Lakes region. He emphasized the collective responsibility of all involved in the peace process while calling for limited foreign interference. He said that there should be no interference at all. He said leaders in the region know the problem in DRC and it can be solved, but must have first the political will. He blamed the conflict in DRC on the politics of identity fueled by foreigners since the days of Mobutu Sese Seko and Juvenal Habyarimana. The Mobutu army was defeated in Rwanda, and together with Habyarimana, they fled to Goma. So actually, the meeting is actually discussing more about the eastern part of Congo, where the M23 rebels are still controlling both North Kivu and South Kivu provinces, and they are still heading towards other major towns in DRC. But,
now, Mike, because of time, I need to just wrap this up very quickly. But before that, the issue of the crude oil pipeline that is an infrastructure project between the CAR, the DRC, South Sudan, and the East Africa. Just talk to us about that very quickly as we wrap up.
Well, there's a great plan, actually. There's a great plan for that pipeline because as I speak right now, even Uganda has commenced the construction of the pipeline between Uganda and Tanzania. It is actually from Hoima town in Uganda to Tanga in Tanzania, the coastal area of Tanzania. So right now, His Excellency, the President of Uganda, is making sure that also there's a construction of road between Uganda to link with Central Africa Republic. This is to enable the commence of the construction work between Central Africa Republic, South Sudan, and Uganda, so that oil can be transported easily for those countries.
Well, Mike, we are going to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you too.
As our correspondent in Uganda, that's Mike Arareng, joining us on the line. And it is that time of the day where we say good afternoon to the Upside team and a happy Thursday. Hello, Dabuho.
Happy Thursday to you too, Lulu. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good, thanks. And how are you?
Fantastic. Well, not so fantastic based on the first conversation that we'll be having. It's regarding Olerato.
Yeah.
The story that everyone is talking about right now. We get to talk to someone who knew her, a close friend, and we want to find out who she was. We are hearing about, yes, the date and what happened, but who was Olerato? She had dreams, she had ambitions, she had a life that she wanted to live. So we unpack that with someone very close to her. And then later on, we talk to ABSA's Dr. Paul Bayliss about the final call for entries to one of Africa's biggest art competitions, the ABSA L'Atelier 2025. And if you're an emerging artist with a story to tell, this is the conversation that you need to be looking out for. That's all coming up on The Upside.
That's coming up at the top of the hour, The Upside with Tebohole Kuleni and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. For myself, Lulu Gaboo and the Africa Update team, it's been a good day. Thank you to our producer, Tracy Bumgard, our technical operator, Mondlim Dambo, and social media, Elaine Bengani. Let's do this again tomorrow and continue with us on our social media platforms. Bye-bye.